All right, we are live and excited and ready for this conversation, and I'm so honored to be joined by my own godmother, Dr. Judy, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. But first, I want to welcome all the folks who are tuning in now to Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations, where we are bringing civic programming to you. Manny's was still is a physical place in San Francisco, but we had to shut down. And so this is our way of giving back and continuing to civically engage the public in this time of need. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Manny, and I'm joined here by Dr. Judy Kuriansky. She's been well known as Dr. Judy for years, giving wise advice on call-in radio and many TV shows. She is a professor of psychology at Columbia University Teachers College and has provided psychosocial support worldwide, including during the SARS epidemic in Hong Kong in 2003 and during the 2014 and 2015 Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone, about which she wrote a book, Psychosocial Issues of a Deadly Epidemic, What Ebola Has Taught Us About Holistic Healing, and also has produced many videos on her YouTube channel. In response to the coronavirus outbreak, she sounded the alarm at the United Nations about stopping the spread in Africa, and appeared on Chinese CGTV television. And at the UN, the main NGO representative of the International Association of Applied Psychology, she advocated on successful inclusion of mental health and well-being in the UN Agenda 2030 and the Global Compact for Migration. Finally, she's provided psychosocial recovery in Haiti, Japan, the United States of America, China, Sri Lanka, San Martin, and Iran, in Jordan for Syrian refugees after 9/11 at Ground Zero, school shootings, and the earthquake in San Francisco. She and her music partner composed original anthems performed for these events, notably Hope is Alive. Dr. Judy.
Oh, well, thank you for all of that, and Manny. I must say, my most important of all is that I am your God aunt, my Aunt Judy, which means a great deal to me. I am so proud of you, all your followers, all your listeners, all the people who come to your civic space should be. I know what a dedicated person you are to the betterment of all people. I remember you being the president of your school. I remember you being sent around the world from Rio to all countries to learn about what is important civically for people. I know you have done so much for San Francisco and for the world. And for that, I am so proud to really be your Aunt Judy and to be on this program with you, and very, very honored to share at this very, very powerful moment. As you said, I've spent many years, decades, helping people around the world, and this is the most horrific of all the disasters, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the bridge fallings, the school shootings, all the things that I have been at, the tsunamis. The fact that the world is in such terror now is really something that's very powerful. And I must say, I was very moved by what you said the other day on your program here, when you said that you were in the middle of your prayers, your morning prayers, and that you were crying. And you didn't know why you were crying, but I know why.
Right. Why?
Well, because when such a generalized horror happens as this, people like yourself and many people who are listening and all the people who come to your space would know this, that there is a deep compassion that when you are sensitive, you feel. And that when such tragedy happens to so many in the world, that core deep inside that cares for people in this world is triggered, even when you don't know somebody who immediately in your life has been affected. So many people are affected that your sensitivity is triggered at that moment. And when you are praying, you are closest then to the God being and asking questions like, how can this be happening? This is one of the curious, questions of all time that can never be answered, because things like this happen and it depends on how we cope with it.
Well, I certainly do feel like definitely what you just said, my emotions have been kind of running rampant with all this. And I have a lot of questions for you. The title of today's conversation is the emotional impact of the coronavirus. But Dr. Judy, Aunt Judy, to me,
Yeah.
honorably, I know you've prepared a couple slides for us to kind of talk about the emotional impact of the coronavirus first. So why don't we go ahead and start with the slides that you provided? You can talk us through some of the things that you've gleaned from this and some tips and advice that you have for people.
I will indeed. I'll say first in general that as Manny you felt, and as I've been feeling myself as a sensitive person, and also having lost now two of my cousins to this COVID, and having spent this morning at the funeral virtually. So this is a powerful experience. So I want
Mm,
everybody to know, as I've had to deal with myself, that the emotions that you feel now are all valid. That whatever the fears are, whatever the feelings are, whatever the anger is, the frustration, all the resentments and all the flood of emotions are all normal and important to experience. So I think that's really important. So when I go to share my screen here, I do want to make some important points. And one of them is that I've been quite distressed about this concept of people using the word social distance. As a
mm,
psychologist, I would love for everyone who is on this program now to change that word to physical distance, because I know as a psychologist, having done research and having done helpfulness to so many people, that social connectedness is what brings us out of the misery. And
mhm.
so, for so many people on TV and in the media to be saying social distance, we don't want social distance. We want physical distance of 6 feet. So, please start using that word, because it's the social connectedness that helps. And helping each other makes a big difference. Anywhere that I have been around the world, when you are helpless and feel hopeless yourself, reaching out that hand to someone else, whatever it is and whoever it is, strangers as well,
Mhm.
makes us feel that connectedness and feel that we are not alone. Because you have talked about on your program about the loneliness and
Right,
how upsetting this is.
right.
Another psychological point I want to raise is that contact comfort is critical. This is another psychological principle, and it is called contact comfort. There is, in fact, a cuddle chemical. That's oxytocin that flows in our brain and in our body. And it is the same chemical that mothers feel when they bond with their babies. The cuddle chemical is from hugging. I saw you hugging yourself. So, everybody, just put your arms around you and hug yourself. And if you cannot hug a person, because right now we have to be careful about that, look at Linus over there, our famous cartoon character. Linus cuddling with his blanket. Something soft and cuddly is very comforting, as you see the young lady with her pillow. And this heart sending yourself love experiences, hugging yourself, even looking in the mirror and watching yourself hug yourself. What you see in that other picture is me after 9/11, when the World Trade Towers fell down, and we were handing out teddy bears. Teddy bears are a real contact comfort, what we call transitional object, that all children and all adults can use.
And
I want
Judy?
to emphasize that at this time of terrible trauma, we must think about how we are resilient. This is a psychological principle. And here it is with the ball. Imagine you have a ball in your hand, bounce the ball down. What happens? It comes back up. This is us. We are resilient as a bouncing ball. That is, in fact, the definition of it. The ball bounces, we can feel down, we can feel like we've been broken, we have losses, and yet we always bounce back up. And we know what that is. Think about what it is that helps you to bounce back up. It is very important at this time also for you to take care of yourself, even if you're taking care of other people. The principle clearly is that you cannot care for others unless you're taking care of yourself. People like myself who are psychologists are always told that. What are you doing after all the traumas that I've been at? Whenever we come home from helping others all night long and handing out gloves and water and sympathy and everything, then we're asked, what do you do to feel good about yourself? So for me, I call my loved ones to hear their voice. And sometimes I just soak in a hot bath. My mother taught me to do that, so that can help. Speaking to someone, some people, some of my family members who have lost their loved one today decided they're going to garden. Why? Because that will show there's an affirmation for life and growth. So that's going to help them. I'll last make this point that post-traumatic growth is a psychological principle opposite from what we all know about post-traumatic stress. All the fears and the nightmares and the stress and the body aches and the grief and the loss. There is a principle called post-traumatic growth. Resilience is one of it. In the midst of a trauma, there are ways that we grow. We get closer to others. I live in an apartment. I've never even said hello to some of my neighbors. All of a sudden, we're talking to each other in the supermarket and in the elevator. So this kindness towards strangers is what's happening in this world now. Saying hello to people you've never said hello to ever before. In New York, we don't even look at people, and now, of course, we have to keep distance, but we still take a little. Oh, I hope you're okay. Everybody's asking people if they're okay, and we can find new meaning in life. So this is important for the people, especially who are religious, or even if you're not religious. What is your new philosophy of life? Can you just even say things that maybe you thought were so trite before? My mother used to say, the door closes, the window opens. Well, guess what? That's true. This is a terrible door closing. What's the window that's opening for you? The sun will always come up tomorrow. As miserable as it is now, you could see the sun coming up right there. And I'll end my PowerPoints with this. Having been in Sierra Leone and West Africa in the height of Ebola, when people were running away, I went to do psychosocial support. And with my music partner, Russell Daisy, we write songs. And we wrote this song, Hope is Alive. I'm going to play you just a snippet of it, but it gives the message that's extremely important now, and that is of hope. And this is how it goes. But we are survivors, so we will survive. We gotta dance together, dance together. All peace and life. We gotta rock together, rock together. All peace and life. We gotta sing together, sing together. All peace and life. We gotta laugh together, love each other. All peace and life. I help you, you help me. All peace and life. He helps her, she helps him. All peace and life. We gotta dance together, dance together. All peace and life. We gotta rock together, rock together. All peace and life. We gotta sing it together, sing it together. All peace and life. We gotta laugh together, love each other. All peace and life. There we go. So
Amazing.
You like that?
I love that. Thank you, Aunt Judy. All right,
Yeah.
I want to let folks
Hope
thank you for that
is
presentation.
what prevails and gets us through, and Manny, that is also proven by research that hope can get us through all of the traumas, even COVID-19 that we're getting through now.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Judy. I really appreciate it. For folks who have questions for Dr. Judy, you can type them in at any time, we're going to get to the Q&A portion of this conversation. This is going to end at 5:30. You've got 15 minutes, but if you have questions for Dr. Judy, you can start typing them in now. My first question to you, Dr. Judy, is about loneliness, and you mentioned that I talked about it earlier, and I think that's one of the hardest things about this, that we are asked, we are being asked to deal with this trauma or this crisis um, in our own homes. So, what have you seen are tools for people who are feeling lonely to overcome that loneliness and make it through this emotionally?
What I want to say about loneliness is that it's a very common emotion, certainly when we are locked in our home. However, we're never really alone, and we always are alone. We're born alone, we die alone, we create experiences where we are not feeling that we are the only one. And it is always possible to find people who care about you. And now, in this time, I am sure all of you are feeling that many people are coming out of the woodwork who care about you. And
Hmm.
it's time for you to come out of the woodwork to reach out to them too. That's the way to get past loneliness. As soon as you have 1 inch of a
Hmm.
feeling that nobody cares about me, I'm here all by myself. Yes, you are in your home, many of you, but
Hmm.
you do not have to feel loneliness by
Hmm.
simply reaching out, making a telephone call, getting onto a Zoom call. So there never has to be a feeling of loneliness and being alone.
So I think there's a so thank you for that, and I'm going to try to implement that feeling in my life. I know that tonight is the first night of Passover, which is typically a time where a lot of us gather in person.
Yes.
I know my mother is listening in on this call, so hi, mom. And it's sad because Easter is also on Monday, and there's just this. Where it's almost strange and ironic that this would happen in a time where so many of the world religions are being told to gather. So it's especially acute right now. I want to talk to you about short-term versus
And
long-term
lots of
emotional
love
impact.
to your mom too, because your mom was my best friend in at Smith College, and that's
Yes,
how I became your Aunt Judy. So
yes.
this is a way to recognize for all of us reaching back into our lives for even our childhood friends that we all have some.
Yeah, and talking to them, and that's happened to me too. Old friends who I haven't spoken to in a while have called me, and we've spoken, and it's wonderful.
There you go.
Um, what about so the short-term emotional effects you talked about, post-traumatic resilience? I want to also ask you what you think the long-term emotional impacts of this crisis are going to be on society, and how you think it's going to impact how we connect to each other long term.
Well, there's good and bad about this, and it's up to us how we choose it. Because certainly, Manny, I have seen the long term effects of many disasters, from the earthquake in Haiti and China and Japan and Sri Lanka and all over the world, in many disasters. And I have
Hmm.
written endlessly about that we must be very attuned to the long term effects. And it is up to us whether over the long term we learn some lessons, like the lessons that I just said, which
Yeah.
is that you can emerge from this stronger. There's a wonderful phrase, we get strong at the broken places. So we can learn about that, or we can go down a different road. And many people, I fear, can go down that road, which is to remember all the past horrors. Now, this is normal. When over a long term of a disaster, right now when COVID 19 is happening, people can be remembering all the abuses that once happened to them, all the
Mm.
sadness, all the times when things didn't work out, all the times when someone was mean to you. And I want you to know that that is normal. Let yourself feel those feelings, remember those memories, and then say, that was then, and let me move on now to a new choice, because this is another psychological principle, Manny, and that is it's almost a Buddhist idea.
Hmm.
We can only have one thought in our mind at any one time, only one. And so you might as well choose that one thought in your mind at that moment is a thought that brings a smile to your face. Because if you're smiling, it's impossible for you not to feel the smile inside yourself. If you need to, go to the mirror and smile at yourself, and you'll find that you have to smile back. Because I often say, when we are together, I ask people to turn to the person next to them and say, smile at that person. It's impossible for them to not smile back. So now that you can't necessarily be with others, go smile in your mirror. That's, I think, the way to deal with the long-term effects. But be aware that it will last for a while, and that's normal.
Hmm. I wanted to ask you, and then also if you have questions, again, please type your questions into Dr. Judy, psychologist who's studied a lot of the psychosocial effects of pandemics, just like the one that we're in. What are you mentioned the bathtub, but I wanted to ask you, I wanted you to elaborate on it. What are you seeing as some healthy and unhealthy coping mechanisms that folks are utilizing right now to address the stress and anxiety of everything that's happening?
Yes, well, this is very important because there are, in fact, very unhealthy ways of coping, and those are turning towards the addictions.
Hmm.
Obviously, that the statistics have shown that there is a 50% increase in sales of alcohol. Some people have turned to alcohol for comforting themselves. That can be very dangerous. Other people have turned to whatever drugs are in their medicine cabinet and using those.
Yeah.
My Another thing I am concerned about, and that is overeating, because when we are on our own at home and when we feel bored, in any case, you can turn to food. And when you don't think you have something else and we want comforting, I talked about comfort, contact comfort before, hug the
Hmm.
pillow, don't stuff your face. So I think this eating too much is another addictive behavior that is not so healthy. I think some way of self-caring, self-comforting, and even, you haven't mentioned one other part of my life, and that is I did spend some time being a sex therapist. I was
I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you to talk about it.
Oh, you're waiting for
You
me.
should
Okay.
you should tell
I,
people about the Rolling Stones cover.
oh, the Rolling Stones cover. Yes, I've had Gwen Stefani, and I've had the Rolling Stone. I've had so many rock stars on my radio call and advice show, being honorary love doctors and giving their advice. And I did that for many years, where people would call me after, Dr. Judy, my boyfriend left me. What do I do? Dr. Judy, my one breast is smaller than the other. What do I do?
Yeah.
And one way for self-comforting is pleasuring oneself. I do have to mention that. And I was
Yeah.
very surprised that even a very respected um, reporter on the TV once said that, and I went, "Oh my God, that's amazing! You just said that." Um, that is one way that is healthy to take care of yourself. You mentioned taking a bath after you get out of the bath, taking all kinds of salve and just rubbing it all over your body, lying down, daydreaming that
Yeah.
of the things that you want to have happen, reading the book, learning a language you never had time to learn before. What is it that you always wanted to do that you could do at home? Clearly, it can't be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. That was something I did, and I wouldn't be doing again. But something you can do at home that you always wanted to do. Now is your time.
Yeah.
Even if it's cleaning out your closet, do something that makes you feel you've accomplished something, because being out of control, the only way to get back in control is to do something very simple that does make you feel control, even if it's rearranging the forks in your
Hmm.
drawer.
Okay, let's get to some audience questions, Aunt Judy. So Riss asks, how do you think high schoolers will be impacted in the future by this time, both psychologically and emotionally?
Okay, I'm really glad you asked that because I spent all those years on the radio talking to high schoolers, and there's two things that two ways that this could go for you in high school. One is what I have worried about for ages and I have lectured about a lot, and that is please learn to talk to your friends and your new girlfriends and boyfriends with emotions because I'm tired of going to some discotheques at time when I was in Singapore, and everybody, instead of talking to each other, was like this with their
Hmm.
handheld. And I've been lecturing about that for ages. So I hope that some teenagers will go towards saying, you know what? Let's have a real relationship. Let's have real intimacy. Let's really talk to each other. I hope you do that. The opposite, and I've seen this happen also, is that after a tragedy, that some teenagers become very risky and they say, you know what? The world's going to come to an end anyway. What good does it do for me to be cautious or careful or anything? Then they have risky sex behavior, risky drug behavior. Please go the first way. Use this as an opportunity for intimacy and closeness and learning how to talk to one another instead of LOL.
Hmm. All right, Tara has a question. They ask, what do you recommend we do if a friend or family member is panicking or spiraling? And how about ourselves?
Okay, so one thing that's really important when someone is panicking and spiraling is to be there with your love and your listening. So that's the first thing is never say to somebody, stop panicking. Everything's going to be all right. People who are in the midst of a real huge emotional reaction need to purge it. This is a psychological principle of release. And so it is okay for you to allow that person to just whew, let it all out because it's built up and it's going to explode. It's like a pot that's boiling. And
Hmm.
then you could just be there and say, you know what? I'm here for you. If you're feeling that kind of panic, tell me about it. For some people, expressing what the panic is a way of purging it and letting it come out. And I promise you that once they do that, it can release just like that pot that stops boiling.
Hmm. And thank you very much, Aunt Judy. And the final question is from Bridget. Thank you so much, Manny and Dr. Judy, for cultivating a sense of connection in this very challenging period. Um, Bridget goes on to say, quite heartwarming to hear and see your affirmation of trauma, loneliness, soft blankets, and reaching out. And also very appreciative of the revision of social distancing to physical distancing. Do you foresee this period as inadvertently helping to destigmatize involuntary physical and social isolation and what can be its devastating effects on both individual and collective health and well being? And if so, do you see that process of destigmatization happening given our collective short term memory in the United States, especially? And what can we do to sustain the expanded recognition of our human need to connect, converse, and touch?
Beautiful. And I think the answer to that is that it's up to all of us to remember the lessons that we keep hearing about all along, which is that love is the answer. The Beatles sang it. That compassion for others makes a difference. Destigmatizing. I'm so glad that she mentioned that. Not looking at others with prejudice, accepting so many other people for who they are, and extending your hand in friendship and in caring. And as you heard in that song, my final message about that and for the future and the answer to her question would be reaching out to help one another. You saw that in the video when when the boys turned to each other and said, I help you, you help me, asking someone, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And also then asking, this is what you can do to help me. We have a hard time asking for help from each other, but we must remember that message and write it down or put it in on your mirror, say it to yourself when you're waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth. So you remember the message of extending your love and your hand.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Judy. It's really nice to see you. I mean, I wish I could give you an actual hug. I guess I'll just have to
Well, we
settle.
have virtual
I'll have
hug.
to. I'll have to settle for a self hug to get some of the cuddle chemicals out there. But real quick, a public service announcement. I just want to, if folks who are here can go to the Q&A box to the answered section, you'll see a link by Jupiter from my team with the Join It link to become a sponsor of Manny's. Would love to ask for all of your support to become a sponsor of my small business. I've also put the link on my screen. If you go to my screen, you'll see joinit.org/o/Manny's. That's joinit.org/o/Manny's. And if you're not already a sponsor, I'd love to ask you to consider becoming a sponsor and supporting my small business as we continue to provide this civic programming to the public for free as a public service. So you can go to joinit.org/o/Manny's to become a sponsor of Manny's. Dr. Judy, I want to also publicly thank you for supporting my small business early on. You were one of the first people to support us, and I really, really appreciate it. And it meant a lot when you did it then, and now I hope I'm doing you proud with Manny's and what we're all about. And also my mother as well. She's still on the call. I want to thank her for creating me and also giving me all the trust and love and support that I've needed to do this. If you'd like today's conversation, you can tag us at Welcome to Manny's. And Dr. Judy, what's your tag online? It's Dr. Judy K, right?
At Dr. Judy K, right? You have to
at Dr. Judy K.
Last.
Thank you to Sam, Jupiter, and Ram from my team. For those who are celebrating Passover and Easter, I wish you a happy one. And thank you very much, Aunt Judy. I really appreciate it. And talk soon. I'll see you soon.
You're a joy. What a service.
You're a joy. You're a joy.
Love you.
Have a